If someone had told me a year ago that my life would be completely dismantled and rebuilt by the man in the corner office, I would have laughed. A dry, humorless sound, the kind you make when you know the universe enjoys a good cosmic joke at your expense. My life was a fortress built of routine. Predictable, safe, solitary, and I liked it that way. Or at least, I had convinced myself that I did. My world was measured in millimeters and right angles. I was an architect, and my job was to create order from chaos, to impose structure on empty space. My apartment was a testament to this philosophy. Books arranged by color and size, coffee mugs hanging in perfect alignment, a single lonely succulent on the windowsill that I watered every Tuesday at 7 post-meridium. The gym was part of that routine, not the bright, bustling kind filled with grunting alpha males and women in fluorescent spandex. Mine was a 24-hour place, tucked away in a basement downtown. I went at 11 at night, when the only other occupants were the ghosts of daytime exertion and the low hum of the ventilation system. It was another fortress, another controlled environment. And then there was Julian. Julian was the antithesis of my carefully curated life. He was a senior project manager of my firm, a force of nature crammed into a tailored suit. He didn't walk into rooms, he conquered them. His voice was a low rumble that commanded attention, his confidence a physical presence that seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the air. He was loud, decisive, and from my vantage point in a quiet cubicle, utterly terrifying. He was also beautiful, annoyingly, distractingly, painfully beautiful. The kind of man who looked like he was carved from granite and ambition. Broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his shirts, a jaw that could cut glass, and dark, intense eyes that rarely, if ever, looked my way. When they did, it was with a dismissive glance that made me feel like a minor calculation error in his grand design. So I watched from distance. That was the established barrier. He was up there in the stratosphere of corner offices and client dinners, and I was down here in the trenches of blueprints and building codes. He was the sun, and I was a nameless planetoid in a far-flung, uninteresting orbit. He was, I assumed with a certainty that felt like a stone in my gut, impeccably, flawlessly straight. This assumption was the highest, thickest wall in my fortress. Our interactions were minimal and sterile. He'd stride over to my desk, tap a thick finger on a blueprint, and demand an update. Now, the schematics for the Harrison Tower atrium. What's the status? I'd given the status. I'd keep my voice even, my eyes fixed on the paper, my hands steady. Inside, my heart would be a frantic, trapped bird, beating its wings against the cage of my ribs. I could smell his cologne, a clean, sharp scent of cedar, and something else I couldn't name. It clung to the air long after he was gone, a phantom presence that scrambled my focus for the rest of the day. He was a disruption I managed with practiced avoidance. I took my lunch at my desk. I left the office at precisely 5:30, never lingering for the casual after-work drinks he sometimes organized. I kept my head down and my work flawless. That was the deal I had made with myself. Admire from afar. Never engage. Never risk exposure. The Harrison Tower project changed everything. It was the biggest project our firm had ever landed. A 50-story monument of glass and steel that was meant to redefine the city skyline. And Julian was leading it, which meant, by some cruel twist of fate, that I was pulled from my quiet corner and assigned as one of the lead architectural designers. My orbit was suddenly, violently, yanked closer to the sun. The days blurred into weeks of relentless pressure. Late nights became the norm, fueled by stale coffee and the hum of fluorescent lights. The office, once a place of structured quiet, became a war room. And at the center of it all was Julian. He thrived on the chaos. The more intense the pressure, the sharper he seemed to become. I, on the other hand, was fraying at the edges. My routines were shattered. My fortress was under siege. The late nights meant no gym. No quiet solitude to reset my mind. I was living on caffeine and anxiety, and the constant proximity to him was a special kind of torture. It was a Thursday night, or maybe Friday morning. I'd lost track. The city outside our floor-to-ceiling windows was a glittering, sleeping beast. Inside, it was just the two of us. The rest of the team had finally been sent home, their faces pale with exhaustion. But a crucial deadline loomed, a presentation for the client at 9 in the morning, and the final renderings were still not right. "It's not working," Julian said, his voice rough with fatigue. He was standing behind me, leaning over my shoulder to look at my screen. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. My skin prickled. I had to force myself to breathe. My carefully constructed professional distance had evaporated. There were no more cubicle walls, no more hierarchies. Just two tired men, a glowing screen, and the suffocating silence of the empty office. "The light," I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. "The simulation for the morning light in the atrium. It's too harsh. It makes the steel look cold." He didn't answer for a long moment. I could feel his breath on my neck. My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat in the quiet. "Don't look at him. Don't turn around. Just focus on the screen." "Show me," he said, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. For the next 2 hours, we worked. But it was different. He wasn't managing. He was collaborating. He pulled up a chair, so close our shoulders were almost touching. He listened as I explained the complex software, the nuances of light and texture. He asked questions, smart questions. He saw the problem not as a manager, but as a designer. For the first time, I felt like he was seeing me. At 3 in the morning, I finally leaned back, my eyes burning. The rendering on the screen was perfect. The morning sun spilled into the virtual atrium, warm and golden, making the space feel alive. "There," I said, the word catching in my throat. "That's it." Julian was silent for a full minute, just staring at the screen. I risked a glance at him. In the soft glow of the monitor, the hard edges of his face seemed to soften. The mask of command was gone. He just looked tired. Deeply, profoundly tired. "Leo," he said, turning to look at me. His eyes were dark and unreadable. "That's brilliant," my breath hitched. A single word. But from him, it felt like a seismic event. He scrubbed a hand over his face. "I'm so wired I don't think I could sleep if I tried. My brain feels like it's full of bees, a stomach full of bees." I knew that feeling well. "I usually go to the gym," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. My cheeks flushed with heat. It felt like a confession of a secret life. He raised an eyebrow. "At 3 in the morning?" I shrugged, try for nonchalance I didn't feel. "It's quiet." He stared at me, a strange, calculating look in his eyes. My stomach twisted. I'd said too much, revealed a crack in my armor. He probably thought I was a freak. "You know what?" he said, standing up and stretching, his tall frame seeming to fill the entire room. "That's a damn good idea. I need to burn this energy off, or I'm going to punch a hole in a wall." He paused, looking down at me. "Your gym, is it nearby?" My heart stopped. It literally just stopped beating for a second. This was not happening. This was a caffeine-induced hallucination. Julian, my boss, my torment, my secret object of fascination, wanted to come to my sanctuary. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. He seemed to take my stunned silence as assent. "Good. Let's go. I'll drive." And, just like that, the walls of my fortress came crashing down. The car ride was a blur of surreal silence. Julian's car was like him, big, black, and smelling faintly of expensive leather and that same cedar cologne. It felt like being sealed in a small, dark box with a predator. I stared out the window, watching the empty streets slide by, my mind a blank slate of panic. What is happening? What do I do? What do I say? We arrived at the gym. The fluorescent sign cast a lonely, sterile glow on the wet pavement. I swiped my key card, the beep echoing in the silence. The familiar scent of clean rubber and antiseptic washed over me, but tonight it brought no comfort. It felt like I had brought the outside world, the Julian world, into my last safe space. He followed me into the cavernous, empty weight room. The rows of black and chrome machines looked like sleeping metal animals. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the soft squeak of our shoes on the rubber floor. "Wow," Julian said, his voice echoing slightly. "You weren't kidding. It's empty." He shed his suit jacket, tossing it onto a bench. He rolled up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt, revealing thick, muscular forearms dusted with dark hair. My throat went dry. This was a side of him I had only ever imagined. The corporate armor was gone. I led him to the locker room, my movements stiff and awkward. I felt like an imposter in my own routine. He changed into a spare set of workout clothes he apparently kept in his car, a simple gray t-shirt and black shorts. The t-shirt stretched tight across his chest and shoulders. I quickly changed, keeping my back to him, my fingers fumbling with my laces. My heart was a jackhammer. Back in the weight room, a new dynamic settled between us. In the office, he was the authority. Here, in this space of iron and sweat, I held the knowledge. I was the one who knew the rhythms of this place, the temperament of each machine. He gravitated towards the bench press, a predictable choice. He loaded the bar with a weight that made my eyes widen. He lay down on the bench, his broad back straining the fabric of his shirt. Need a spot. The words came out of me, automatic. It's what you did. Gym etiquette. He glanced up at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Yeah, thanks. I moved behind him, placing my hands loosely near the bar. He took a deep breath and pushed the weight up. 1 rep, 2. His form was perfect, strong, controlled. On the 8th rep, his arm started to shake. The bar dipped. Without thinking, I gripped the bar, my fingers brushing against his. A jolt, hot and electric, shot up my arm. It was nothing, a fleeting, accidental touch. But my entire nervous system lit up like a switchboard. His skin was warm, calloused, real. The sensation was so overwhelming, I almost let go. He grunted, pushing the weight back onto the rack with my help. He sat up, breathing heavily, sweat sheening on his forehead. Thanks, he said, not looking at me. Got a little ambitious there. My hand was still tingling. My mind was reeling. It was just a touch. Get a grip, Leo. He moved through the gym, and I watched him. I saw things I'd never seen under the harsh office lights. A faded scar that ran along his left bicep. The way his brow furrowed in concentration when he was lifting. I saw the weariness in the set of his shoulders, a fatigue that his office persona always managed to hide. He wasn't just a project manager. He was a man, carrying a weight that had nothing to do with the iron in his hands. He walked over to the cable machine, a complex apparatus of pulleys and weights, and stopped. He stared at it for a moment, then looked over at me, a look of genuine frustration on his face. How the hell does this thing work? He asked. The question hung in the air between us. It was an admission, a small crack in the facade of his unflappable confidence. Julian, the man who ran $50 million projects, was asking me for help. The power dynamic, for a fleeting moment, had completely inverted. I walked over, my heart a little calmer now. This I knew. This was my territory. You want to work your back or your chest? I asked, my voice steady. Back, he said, sounding almost relieved. I adjusted the pulleys, selected a pin for the weight stack. Here, I said. Stand like this. I positioned his feet. Keep your back straight. Pull towards your abdomen. Squeeze your shoulder blades together. I stood behind him, guiding his first movement. My hand hovered over his back, not quite touching, but close enough to feel the heat coming off him, to see the muscles contract under his shirt. He was listening. He was actually listening to me. After a few sets, he stepped away from the machine, rolling his shoulders. I see why you come here, he said, his voice quiet. You can just turn your brain off, yeah, I said. Something like that. We finished our workout in a comfortable, strangely companionable silence. The initial tension had bled away, replaced by a shared exhaustion. We were just 2 people in an empty room, moving heavy things, too tired for pretense. In the locker room, the silence felt different, heavier, charged. We showered in separate stalls, the sound of water drumming against tile filling the space. When I stepped out, a towel wrapped around my waist, he was standing by the sinks, already dressed. He was staring at his reflection in the mirror, but he didn't seem to be seeing it. He looked lost. The client, he said, his voice low, addressing his own reflection. Harrison, he's going to tear those renderings apart tomorrow. I stopped, my hand frozen on my locker. They're good, I said. They're the best we've done. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were dark with a vulnerability that stunned me. My father thinks I'm going to fail, he said, the words coming out in a quiet rush. as if they had been waiting right behind his teeth. He's on the board. He never thought I was cut out for this. He thinks I got the job because of him. This project, this is my one shot to prove him wrong. The confession hung in the sterile, empty space between us. It was a piece of himself he had just handed me, raw and unguarded. All the arrogance, the confidence, the intimidation, it was all a shield. Armor against a wound I never could have imagined. I didn't know what to say. All I could think was that I wanted to close the distance between us. I wanted to tell him he wasn't going to fail. He's wrong, I heard myself say. My voice was firm. You're the best manager in that firm, Julian. You pull people together. You make them better. That project is where it is because of you. And those renderings, they're brilliant because you push for them to be brilliant. He stared at me, his expression unreadable. The air crackled. The hum of the ventilation system seemed to fade into nothingness. It felt like the world had shrunk to the few feet of tiled floor separating us. He took a step towards me, then another. He stopped right in front of me. He was so close I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I could smell the clean scent of soap on his skin. My heart was no longer a bird. It was a battering ram against my ribs. This is it. This is the moment I get fired. Or punched. He reached out, his hand hesitating for a fraction of a second before his fingers gently touched my jaw. His thumb brushed against my cheek. His touch was feather-light, questioning. It wasn't a gesture of aggression or dominance. It was unbelievably, terrifyingly tender. My breath caught in my throat. Present tense. This is happening right now. My mind is a blank white screen. All I can feel is the rough pad of his thumb on my skin. All I can see are his eyes, searching mine for something. Permission? An answer? He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, to stop him, to retreat back to the safety of my fortress. I didn't move. I couldn't. I had been waiting for this my entire life, a touch I never even dared to dream of. His lips met mine. It wasn't a passionate, desperate kiss like in the movies. It was slow, hesitant, a soft pressure, a question asked without words. It was a kiss that tasted of exhaustion and coffee and a vulnerability so profound it made my knees feel weak. I leaned into him, my hand coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady, heavy beat of his heart beneath my palm. It was just as frantic as mine. He deepened the kiss slightly, a soft sigh escaping his lips. It was a sound of surrender, of relief. The armor was gone. The shield were down. It was just Leo and Julian in the basement of a sleeping city, in a moment stolen from time. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. We stood there for a long time, breathing the same air, our hearts beating a frantic, mirrored rhythm. Leo, he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't decipher. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. I woke up to the insistent blare of my alarm. For a disoriented second, I didn't know where I was. The sheets were tangled around my legs, and my apartment was filled with the pale, gray light of early morning. Then it all came rushing back. The office, the renderings, the gym, Julian, the kiss. My eyes flew open. I was in my own bed, alone. A cold dread, sharp and immediate, washed over me. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding. The other side of the bed was empty, undisturbed. A faint scent of his cologne lingered on my pillow, the only evidence that he had been here at all. After the kiss, things had been a blur. He had driven me home. He had walked me to my door. I had invited him in for water, a pathetic excuse. He had followed me inside. We had stood in my meticulously ordered living room, the silence buzzing between us. And then we had kissed again. One kiss had led to another, and somehow we had ended up in my bedroom. We didn't do much. We just held each other, two exhausted people clinging together like life rafts. I had fallen asleep in his arms, and now he was gone. He had left without a word. No note, no text, just an empty space in my bed and the ghost of his scent. The anxiety hit me like a physical blow, a swarm of angry bees in my stomach. He regrets it. Of course, he regrets it. He was tired. He was stressed. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. The thoughts came fast and cruel, a litany of self-recrimination. I was a fool, a naive, pathetic fool for thinking it could mean anything. I scrambled out of bed, looking for my phone. Nothing. No messages. No missed calls. Just the deafening silence of the screen. Getting ready for work was an act of sheer will. Every movement felt heavy, leaden. I put on my suit, tying my tie with trembling fingers. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. A man with haunted eyes and a pale, drawn face. The man who had been kissed by Julian last night was gone, replaced by this hollowed-out shell. The walk to the office was torture. Every step felt like a march towards my own execution. I imagined the scene, the awkwardness, the pity in his eyes, or worse, the cold, professional mask back in place, pretending nothing had ever happened. The thought made me feel physically ill. I entered the office, my head down, and made a beeline for my desk. I could feel the energy in the room. The pre-presentation buzz. I didn't look towards a corner office. I couldn't. I just sat down, powered on my computer, and stared at the screen, pretending to work. A few minutes later, he walked past my desk on his way to the conference room. He was in his full armor, a perfectly tailored navy suit, a crisp white shirt, his jaw set. He didn't look at me. He didn't even glance in my direction. He just strode past, the scent of his cologne a cruel reminder of the night before. It was a confirmation of my worst fears. It meant nothing. I was nothing. A temporary lapse in his judgment. The presentation happened. I was there in the room, but I wasn't. I was floating somewhere above my own body, watching myself nod at the right times, answer technical questions with a detached, robotic calm. Julian was magnificent. He was charming, confident, commanding. He owned a room. He was the man I had always seen from a distance, the untouchable force of nature. There was no trace of the vulnerable man from the locker room. No hint of the person who had held me while I slept. It was like he had never existed. The clients loved it. They signed off on the design. The room erupted in relieved applause and handshakes. People were congratulating Julian, clapping him on the back. He was smiling a wide, brilliant smile that didn't reach his eyes. I slipped out of the room before anyone could talk to me. I went back to my desk, packed my bag, and walked out of the office. It was only lunchtime. I didn't care. I couldn't breathe in that building for another second. The weekend was the longest of my life. I didn't leave my apartment. I didn't answer my phone. I just existed in a gray limbo of anxiety and regret. The solitude that had once been my comfort was now a form of punishment. The silence of my apartment was no longer peaceful. It was filled with his absence. Every corner held a memory. Him standing awkwardly in the living room. The indent on the pillow next to mine. The fortress had become a prison. I replayed every moment in my head, searching for clues I might have missed. Had I misread everything? Was it all in my head? The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that I had made a colossal, life-altering mistake. I had shattered the professional distance, crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I had probably ruined my career. More than that, I had allowed myself to hope, and the crash back to reality was devastating. By Sunday night, I had resigned myself to the new reality. I would go into work on Monday, be professional, and pretend that Thursday night had never happened. I would rebuild my walls higher and thicker this time. I would go back to being the quiet architect in the corner, and he would go back to being the sun in a distant solar system. It was the only way to survive. A knock on my door shattered the silence. I froze. It was almost 10 at night. I never had visitors. My heart started to pound, a familiar, frantic rhythm. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. It was him. Julian was standing in the hallway of my apartment building, looking as lost and out of place as he had in the gym locker room. He wasn't wearing a suit, just jeans and a dark sweater. His hair was a mess, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked exhausted and nervous. My mind went blank. Every scenario I had played out in my head, every wall I had decided to rebuild, crumbled to dust. I stood there for a long moment, my hand on the doorknob, my heart in my throat. I opened the door. He just stood there, looking at me. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Can I come in?" he asked, his voice low and rough. I stepped back, holding the door open, and he walked inside. He stopped in the middle of my living room, his hands shoved in his pockets. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely a whisper. He was talking to the floor. Leo, I am so sorry for what? I asked, my own voice sounding hollow and distant. He finally looked up at me, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes stole my breath. It was the man from the locker room. He was back. For Friday, he said. For just leaving. For being a complete coward at the office. For all of it. I'm an idiot. He took a breath, like he was stealing himself. I woke up in your bed, and I panicked. This is not. I didn't know what to do. All I could think was that I had to get out before you woke up, before I had to face you. And then at the office, with everyone watching, with my father's legacy breathing down my neck, I just put the armor back on. It's what I do. It's all I know how to do. He took a step closer. This whole weekend, I've been going out of my mind. I thought I'd scared you off. I thought you would think that it meant nothing to me. He shook his head, a look of self-disgust on his face. And that's the stupidest part. Because it wasn't nothing, Leo. It was everything: my carefully constructed defenses, my resignation, my plan to pretend it never happened. It all dissolved. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. He wasn't rejecting me. He was just as scared as I was. I thought you regretted it, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I thought it was a mistake. No, he said, his voice fierce. He closed the remaining distance between us, his hands coming up to cup my face. His touch was warm, solid, real. Not a dream. No, the only mistake was me running away. I've been running my whole life. From what my father wants, from what everyone expects me to be. I'm so tired of running. He looked at me, his dark eyes searching mine. This is new for me. All of it. It's terrifying. But the thought of not seeing you again, of going back to how things were before, that's a hell of a lot more terrifying. And then he kissed me. It wasn't hesitant this time. It was sure. It was desperate. It was a kiss that said everything he couldn't articulate. It was a promise, an apology, a beginning. I kissed him back, my hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. All the anxiety, the fear, the lonely silence of the weekend melted away in the heat of his touch. This was real. We were real. He pulled back, resting his forehead against mine, just like he had in the gym. I don't really know what we're doing, he whispered. Me neither, I whispered back. Is that okay? I felt him smile against my skin. Yeah, he said. It's more than okay. He stayed the night. And this time, when I woke up, he was still there. He was lying on his side, watching me, a soft, sleepy smile on his face. The morning light filtered through the blinds, tracing patterns across his skin. He looked younger, softer. He looked like Julian. Morning, he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. Morning, I replied, a real smile spreading across my own face. It felt foreign but wonderful. He reached out and tucked a stray piece of my hair behind my ear. It was a small gesture, but it was so full of unpracticed tenderness it made my heart ache. A few days later, he found me as I was packing up to leave the office. He leaned against my cubicle wall, a casual posture that was completely at odds with the intensity in his eyes. Got plans? He asked. Jim, I said. He smiled. Mind if I join you? He held up a key card, identical to mine. I got a membership, he said, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. Figure it was time I stopped just working my jaw at meetings. It was more than a gym pass. It was a key, an invitation. It was a tangible symbol that he was stepping into my world, not as a temporary visitor, but as someone who wanted to stay. It was his way of saying he was done running. He was here, with me. And so, a new routine began. It was hesitant at first, awkward. We were two men learning a new language, a new dance. Our old roles at the office bled away, replaced by something new and undefined. We started working out together most nights. The empty gym became our space, a neutral ground where he wasn't the boss and I wasn't the subordinate. We were just Leo and Julian. We'd spot each other on the bench press. I'd show him new exercises. He'd push me to lift heavier than I thought I could. We'd talk. We'd talk about everything and nothing. About his father. About my solitary life. About our dreams for the buildings we designed. Slowly, tentatively, our lives began to merge. His spare workout clothes found a permanent home in my locker. My favorite brand of coffee appeared in his kitchen. We started spending weekends together, exploring the city, going for hikes, or just lying on my couch, reading in comfortable silence. One Saturday morning, I woke up in his apartment. It was the first time I'd stayed over. His place was bigger than mine, more modern, but it had the same feeling of a space that was lived in by a ghost. It was immaculate, impersonal, a place to sleep, not a home. I padded into the kitchen to find him standing by the counter, frowning at his expensive espresso machine as if it had personally offended him. "This stupid thing," he grumbled. "I can never get the foam right." I smiled, walking up behind him. I wrapped my arms around his waist, resting my chin on his broad shoulder. He stiffened for a second, a residual echo of his old self, then relaxed into my embrace, leaning his weight back against me. "Let me," I said softly. I showed him how to steam the milk, how to hold the pitcher at just the right angle. His hands were big and calloused, but he followed my movements with a gentle focus. We stood there, side by side in the morning light, making coffee. It was such a simple domestic act, but it felt monumental. It felt like home. We drank our coffee, sitting on his balcony, overlooking the waking city. He was quiet, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know," he said, staring out at the skyline, "I've lived here for 2 years. This is the first time I've ever actually sat out here." I looked at him, at this powerful, confident man who had been so profoundly lonely, who had a balcony he never used and an espresso machine he couldn't master, who had built a fortress around himself just as impenetrable as my own. He turned to me, his dark eyes soft. "You make things quiet," he said. "Inside my head, it's always so loud. But when I'm with you, it's quiet." My heart swelled. I reached across the small table and took his hand. His fingers laced with mine, a perfect fit. My life used to be a fortress, built of routine and solitude. I thought its walls were there to protect me, to keep me safe from the chaos of the world. But I was wrong. It was a prison I had built for myself. Julian didn't just break down the walls. He walked through the gate I had unknowingly left open for him. He was the plot twist I never saw coming, the disruption that reordered my entire universe. He didn't fix me, and I didn't fix him. We just found our way out of our own fortresses together. And in the quiet spaces we built between us, in an empty gym late at night, or over coffee on a Saturday morning, we found something far better than safety. We found home. What do you think is scarier? The fear of taking a risk on someone, or the fear of a life spent in loneliness? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing for more.